And I've got on the line right now from her parents' home, I guess in New York, Kelly Space. Kelly, are you there?
Hi, I am.
Hi. So let me just get a little background, too, on your situation. So you graduated from Northeastern.
Yep.
How many years did you graduate in, 4 years or 5?
I did 4 years with a couple of summer semesters.
All right, so 4 years, you spent nearly, 190 grand.
Yep.
Over that's about $45,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how much is the tuition at Northeastern?
Actually, this year it's up to $49,000.
No, but what was it when you went?
It was just a little less. It was around 45.
So it's 40. So you didn't borrow then money for your dorm room or your food. All of that money was strictly to pay the tuition.
I did. It was actually that was with room and board.
So, well, that's room and board. Well, how much was just the tuition portion? That's what I'm curious about.
Yeah, no, I think it was around 20.
Okay.
Don't know. As soon as the bill came, I paid it with the loan.
Right. So, but the tuition was only 20. So, where were you living while you were going to school?
I was living on campus the first 2.5 years, and then I did get an apartment the last year.
So, you borrowed the money to pay the rent on your apartment.
Yes, I did.
Right. Now, you also did you buy clothing or with any of the student loan money?
Nope, I didn't buy anything but tuition, room and board, books. That's it.
So, you paid for your food?
Yeah, my meal plan the first couple of years as well.
Yeah, so you got a meal plan in the dorms. What about when you were in an apartment? I mean, you used student money for to eat in restaurants or to.
No. I had a part-time job throughout.
All right, so you worked a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, so you borrowed $190,000. Now you said when you got these loans, I mean, did anybody when you went and got the loan? I mean, does anybody question? I mean, whether or not you can pay the money back or how difficult it might be to try to pay this money back? Was anybody concerned about
I'm still a little confused about. No, that was never brought up, and so I mean, having it not brought up makes you sort of think it's fine.
I mean, how hard was it? I mean, you didn't have to put up any collateral, right, to get these loans?
No, not at all.
Right. Did they care what you were majoring in? Did they ask you, what your major was?
No, not at all.
Did they care about your grades? I mean, could you have been getting C's and D's and you could have kept borrowing the money?
Yeah, that wasn't an issue either, and apparently neither was the fact that my parents were only living on one income, and yeah, I mean that was never an issue.
Now, I mean, did you ever think? I mean, understand right now, right? You're living with your parents because it's so expensive to pay back the debt.
Right.
Maybe did you think about maybe when you went to school, going to school close to home, so you could have lived at home back then instead of borrowing money and maybe gone to a less expensive university?
Yeah, I mean that the idea is, looking back, of course, I regret doing what I did. And
I think you have a television set on in the background. Can you turn that down? Hello?
I'm sorry. What was that?
No, there was some background noise, but anyway, go ahead. Finish what you're saying.
Oh, I'm sorry. If I could go back in time, I would absolutely have gone to a state school or community college the first 2 years. If I knew then what I know now, and at that time, my option or my view was that I should just go to the best school that I applied to and that accepted me, and that was Northeastern at that time.
But even though you couldn't afford it, you went anyway.
Well, I mean, the idea, too, was that, my guidance counselor and financial aid advisor both told me to look into private loans and that money should never stop you from going to school. So I was just under the impression that I was not the only one funding my tuition.
But the only reason that you were able to go to this expensive school is because you were able to borrow the money to pay for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know whose fault that was?
I mean, I'd like to think it was a combination.
Well, you know whose fault it was? I'm not going to say you. It was the government's fault. The government is responsible for you being $190,000 in debt because the government shouldn't have guaranteed those loans. There should be no government guaranteed student loans. If you get interviewed anywhere, when you're talking about this is an example of why the government needs to get out of education because the government got you to borrow that money. There is no way in this world that a 19-year-old, a 20-year-old girl could have borrowed any money from anybody without a government guarantee. The banks would know that you can't pay this off. I'm looking at the numbers. My guesstimate is that based on your loan payment is going to rise to $1,600 a month for the next 20 years.
Yep, next November.
Right. So my guesstimate is that if you get a job where you earn $50,000 a year, about 75% of your income is going to go to taxes and payments on your student loan. You're going to be left with about $1,000 a month or $12,000 a year after a $50,000 job.
And I still do, and I don't make that much. So
Now, let me also get this. So you majored in sociology.
I did.
Right. Now, I could see spending maybe that kind of money if you were going to be a doctor.
Yeah.
But I mean, sociology.
Yeah.
Did they have any guidance? What are you going to do with sociology?
Well, I mean, I didn't start sociology. I started with psychology, then marketing, and then I was undecided.
But you didn't even know. So you didn't even know what you wanted to do. Yet you were borrowing $190,000 to get a degree, and you didn't even know what you wanted to do.
Exactly.
Wouldn't it have been better if you just worked? Maybe if you could have skipped college and just gotten a job?
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I'd explored all of my options.
I mean, you got a job right now where you're working with a computer company?
An internet company, yeah.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you, do you consult your sociology textbooks often to figure out how to do your job?
Not at all.
Is there anything about your job that your college degree prepared you for, or do you think you could have done this job out of high school?
I don't think I could have done it out of high school. I think my college experience definitely helped me, but no, not my major.
Well, your college experience in what way? I mean,
I do feel in those 4 years I've matured as a person.
But don't you think you could have matured just growing older? Even let's say you got a different job for the 4 years, and instead of borrowing all that money, maybe you got a different job. Couldn't work experience have prepared you for this job?
That's absolutely possible.
Were you in a sorority?
No, I wasn't.
I mean, did you go to a lot of parties in college?
No, not so much.
I mean, I did. I don't know. You did. Why did? I mean, I think what college prepares you. It's a social experience. You learn how to handle liquor. You learn how to. I mean, you go to party. I mean, there is really nothing in an undergraduate degree, a liberal arts degree, which is what you got in sociology.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how does that differentiate you? You got all these other people that got. Almost everybody has a college degree.
I'm well aware. I was under wrong assumption after wrong assumption.
And also, now, what about your parents? I mean, did your parents ever see? Because I blame the government first, right? The government never should have put you in this position. They never should have co-signed those loans for you. They are the reason that you're in debt up to your eyeballs, right? It's the government's fault. But beyond the government, then the next I would blame your parents, because your parents were old enough. Your parents should have looked at this and said, wait a minute, how could they let you borrow all this money knowing that you have to pay it back?
Again, I think that sort of comes down to education as well.
What do you mean?
Neither of my parents graduated from college. My father didn't graduate from high school. So we just had a very different view of college than I think maybe a lot of Americans, or most, I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. But, so they didn't understand it either. So maybe they didn't have enough experience. But the real bottom line is, do you see that? I mean, obviously, if there were no student loans available to you, if you couldn't get a government guaranteed loan, what would you have done?
I would have worked. I would have saved up and gone to a community or local school. Absolutely.
And you would be much better off.
Oh, I'm so much better off.
So in other words, all this government help, all this government aid to education, that didn't help you at all.
I don't think it did. It put me in a really sticky position.
But you know who got helped by that government aid?
Who?
Northeastern.
Of course.
They got that $20,000 a year in tuition that, absent those government loans, they wouldn't have got.
Absolutely.
Now, how many of your fellow students at Northeastern were getting government loans, were getting student loans to pay for their tuition?
All of my friends.
All of your friends?
Yeah.
Well, what would have happened? What do you think would have happened if none of your friends could have borrowed any money? Would any of them have gone to Northeastern?
Maybe one of them. That's it.
Right. So none of your other. So you know what probably would have happened? See if you can figure this out. Let's say that none of your friends and none of the other kids, because probably a lot of kids at Northeastern who you weren't friendly with were also getting government loans.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What if nobody could get a loan to go to Northeastern? What do you think would happen?
I think the student body at Northeastern would have significantly dwindled.
And then what would the university do in response to that?
Maybe lower tuition?
Well, absolutely. There, you hit the nail on the head. They would lower tuitions.
Right.
They would lower them to the point where you can afford them. In fact, if there were no student loans and there were no government guaranteed student loans, you might have gone to Northeastern after all, because you might have been able to afford it. The tuition might have been so low that you could have worked your way through school.
Yeah.
But instead, The government tried, and I bet you thought it was I guess when you were borrowing all this money, you probably thought it was great that the government was so nice and making it easy for you to get this great education.
I did think that several times.
Yeah, instead, now you know that they lured you into a trap.
And to be fair, my mother didn't even have to co-sign